where is the red line for Washington that Tehran, if they trespass it or pass it, there is most likely a war, a widened war will be launched.
Well, I think for Washington right now, they understand that Iran is still on their maximalist goals. However, there are hard deadlines in place internationally that will cause a need for either a military solution ultimately or a political solution. For example, current estimates say that China will run out of their crude oil and natural gas supplies by June 8th of this year. You see very similar numbers coming out of places like Japan, South Korea, and even places in Oceania, such as Australia and New Zealand, who are very dependent on Gulf oil, which transits the Strait of Hormuz and the Strait of Malacca in order to survive. Therefore, we will see extreme international pressure on ending this conflict within the next 30 to 60 days. Even President Trump has said that he sees this campaign extending about 2 more weeks before the ending of hostilities. So if Iran does not agree to a political settlement prior to that, the U.S. will have no choice other than one final grand strike against the regime. It's now been reported that the U.S. is bringing in experimental hypersonic missiles that will be able to penetrate into some of the mountainside bases that Iran has in the underground missile cities. They've moved another carrier battle group into the region. We've seen the deployment of marine amphibious ships such as the USS Tripoli, the USS Boxer, which have the type of landing craft necessary to take things such as Jav and Hormuz or Krog Island. So we could very soon see an escalation on the part of the U.S. in order to force the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz and potentially to try to topple the regime. However, there's severe danger in this because Iran has a suicide button that they can push. If Egypt, for example, decides to ally themselves too closely with the U.S. and the UAE in this conflict, Iran has the capacity to not just strike the Suez Canal and shut down all transit in the Red Sea and the Bab al-Mandab Strait. They also have the missile range to destroy things such as the Ethiopian Grand Renaissance Dam, destroying the hydroelectric and water supply for Cairo. They have the capacity to strike water desalination plants in Israel, shutting down the ability of them to function as a civilization and creating a humanitarian crisis within the region. So the escalation ladder is at a point now where neither side really can afford to escalate much further. If Trump carries out his threats to destroy Iranian civilian infrastructure, that puts civilian infrastructure in every Gulf state on the table for strikes of retribution. So I think we'll see a political negotiation going forward. The danger is simply too high on both sides to continue this armed conflict, and I think President Trump will simply declare victory, lay his cards on the table, reopen the Straits of Hormuz under international control, and then we'll see an ending of hostilities, at least in the short term.